here we are on a Sunday morning meeting for a very special occasion. Our very own Door Monk has turned 3 today and it definitely needs a celebration. Given the times of COVID, I know it is not possible to meet in person, but we can definitely celebrate online and that's what we are going to do today. Well, I am Mrunmay Deshpande and I'll be your host today. So, yeah, what is Door Monk exactly? It was established right in 2019. It has a cutting-edge technology platform which connects hospitals and vendors for a smooth experience. It promotes healthy lifestyle, reduces risk of diseases, increases productivity with wholesome nutritious food. It has unmatched operational expertise and SOPs. With over 6 lakhs meals served, Dormong is a pioneer in Pune, Patna, Siliguri, Hyderabad and Saharsa. Currently, we are serving corporates, universities, schools and hospitals. And we are not going to stop there. There are more milestones to be reached, more customers to be reached, and that will happen in future. For this, for this such a great event meeting on a Sunday morning, we have very huge guests with us who are who you would love to chat with, who are one of the pioneers in their own fields, and I would introduce them. So the first guest that we have with us today is, you might be hearing about him through the news, through the YouTube channels. He is a very, very famous personality who deals in cardiovascular and thoracic surgeries. He is a pillar in the 40s world. He is the man behind two-thirds of our India's heart transplants. He is the president of Indian Association of Cardiovascular and Thoracic Surgeries. He is the only Indian on the board of editorial of the journal Innovations and Cardiac Surgery. He is the founder and web developer of iacts.org. With the experience over 40 years, he has done almost 18,000 surgeries in his lifetime. And you may be shocked to know that he you may be shocked to know that he is the first person to perform world's first awake open heart surgery, that too on a 74-year-old patient. It was back in April 2002. He's a pioneer, he's a leader, he's a great influencer, and I'm talking about none other than Dr. Vivek Dawi. Please give him a round of applause.
Thank you. I'm there.
The second guest, a very eminent personality that we have with us, is he is a doctor, but he also has an MBA from IIM Indore. He has done his Master of Philosophy from Birla Institute of Technology and Sciences. He was also a fellow at um, at various institutes such as Startup Meetup and leadership programs. His colleagues describe him as he has immense skill set of clinical talent acquisition and management. He has boundless energy which is required for startup and growth and its environment, and in such a critical domain such as healthcare. Currently, he is associated as a head of medical services at the American Oncological Institute in the Precision Cancer Cell and also at the Citizens Hospital. He was earlier associated with Wokhart Hospital, Thumbe Hospital, and the Care Hospital. I'm talking about none other than Dr. Raza Ali Khan. Please give him a round of applause. Now I request Miss Medha ma'am, who's here with us, to say a few words about Dormonk and you welcome the guests.
A very good morning and hello to all the beautiful people gathered here. Monk in 2019 summer, things were different and we were really poised for like big growth. And day by day, our operations increased. Challenges were there. Then struck the COVID-19, and we were among the most affected sectors. But one thing which made our investment worthy was the resilience shown by the founders, especially Ashutosh and Manik. They have been through the storm, but they have still managed to sail perfectly. Just because of them, we are still keeping our hopes and Josh high. So we wish a very, very happy birthday to Dormonk again, and we wish for Dormonk's prosperity and I believe, and everyone should believe, that we will flourish. So thank you. Now we'll welcome. I want to welcome the most honorable guest here. So now, on behalf of Team Domong, I would like to welcome our honorable guests, Dr. Vivek Javali and Dr. Raza Ali Khan. They hardly need an introduction, actually, as they have made us and our country proud uh, through the body of work they have done. So let's keep an open mic and have a candid discussion with them. I would also like Ashutosh to host the questions. But before Ashutosh comes in, I'm really curious to know about certain things, sir. As we all know, you are the maestro in your own field, and I guess no one better will be. I can find no one better than you to answer this. So during COVID and post-COVID, many people passed away due to cardiac arrest. While struggling with the post-COVID complications, what are the preventive measures they could have taken, sir, to prevent this?
Okay, sorry, my video doesn't show up here.
It's okay, sir.
Today our knowledge on COVID is very little. We know what we know is far less than what we don't know. But we know that the lungs get spoiled, not like a normal ordinary pneumonia where the secretions pile up and clog and consolidate the lungs. Here, the small veins, they get clogged because there is a clotting going on, excessive clotting going on. And because the veins get clotted, actually a portion of the lungs will get gangrenous. There is no rule that only those lung veins should get clotted or arteries will not get clotted. So anywhere in the body, arteries or veins can get clotted because the thrombogenicity has risen. And there are many stories where people did not have much illness. They got admitted, isolated, treated, went home, and then suddenly died. There are some leading doctors to whom this has happened. One of them is a friend of mine who was a big name in gastroenterology in Bangalore. So why did that happen? It happened because if you are not given the proper anti-clotting medicines, then sometimes a very important artery could get clotted. There are 3 arteries in the heart: left front, left back, right. The left front supplies 2/3 of the left ventricle, and if it gets clot in the beginning of its course, then the huge portion of the heart can get involved in a sudden heart attack. If that portion is large enough, then the heart will suddenly refuse to beat and fibrillate. If the fibrillation doesn't revert within 2 or 3 minutes, the person will die suddenly. The same thing can happen in the brain and the person can get a stroke. The lesson drawn home, which we did not know in the beginning, is all these people will have to be on anti-clotting medicine. Anti-clotting medicine does not mean aspirin, that's antiplatelet. It means like heparin or warfarin. And today there are something called the NOVAC, the new novel anticoagulants, dabigatran, that should be there twice a day. And it might be a sensible thing to give it for 45 days. Most fail to do that, and that's why we see these sudden unexpected deaths in patients who are not so ill. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ashutosh, you can continue with your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Medha. I hope I'm audible to all of you.
Yes.
Someone just said yeah. Great. So thank you, Dr. Javali, to take out your time. First of all, I feel honored and privileged. As Medha ma'am rightly said, that our guests today, Dr. Javali and Dr. Raza Ali Khan, they don't hardly need any introduction. So I, on behalf of everyone here, again welcomes you to this, our program, today's celebration. And now, starting with our today's question. So the first question that I mean to say, like, we all can have the questions in case if anybody wish to unmute themselves and ask. But one question which I am also curious about, sir, actually one of the person they recently asked me, during COVID, as you were talking about just now. So suppose there is a heart patient and who already are on COVID, So, what are the precautionary measures that he should take or she should take other than vaccination? And suppose he's a heart patient.
Today, there are only two things in our hand not to fall prey. First is vaccine. India has been luckier than others. We have arrived on the block very early. There has been a lot of international commercial politics to block our vaccines, etc. But and that we have paid a price by not having good steady flow of vaccine. But still, we have had number of people vaccinated, which is larger than the population of America today. So we are not bad. Vaccine we have had in my hospital in Bangalore. We have 5 hospitals in Bangalore. Quite a few patients we treated, maybe more than 10,000. We have not seen in our ICUs a single patient till today who was 3 months after his second dose of vaccine. That means if you have been vaccinated properly, you will still get corona, COVID, but your chances of getting into serious illness or getting admitted into an ICU is almost nil. So that is first defense. Second defense is the pandemic behavior. Your mask, your hand hygiene, your distancing, and everybody knows that there has been actually overdose to the society of that, but still people crib that government is not informing us, which is nonsense. So pandemic behavior and vaccine, there is nothing else in our hand. All those things that you read in WhatsApp once upon a time about HCQ, this drug, that drug, all that is humbug. Thank you. You are muted, I think, Ashutosh.
Sorry. Manik, just to confirm, have our second guest, Dr. Raja Ali Khan, has also joined the call?
Yes. By the name of Captain, he's there.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Raja Ali Khan. How are you? I guess you're on mute, sir. Can you please unmute yourself?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Sorry, actually, I think I've logged in through Captain, but I'm Dr. Raza.
Great. We all know you, sir. As Dr. Vivek was saying regarding the safety measures, and since you have been in the operations, this question is to you, Dr. Raja. That since you have been in the operations and you also come from a very eminent background of medicine, so the question is, what do you think? What are the important factors which comes in play when a hospital wants to manage a very seamless distribution of food at the same time in COVID pandemic was going on? So in this scenario, what were the major challenges that you faced to provide a good food to the patients?
Right. Thank you. I think first of all, any hospital who wants to move forward, I think should have a kitchen of its own. It should not be outsourced, number one. Number two, either it can be managed by a professional organizations or, the hospital itself can manage. Either of the two choices are theirs. It has to be managed in a proper way. And now that we have certain guidelines now laid out by the NABH. And earlier, I think we had also the Safe Eye program. So now, so I think a foundation has been laid where, there are some sort of guidelines that are already existing, which actually has taken the whole, sort of so-called canteen to a more organized and a more, holistic, way of, this whole, patient serving food in a totally different way of level of experience. So, number one, the institution, I feel, according to me, should have its, in-house catering service or, kitchen as such. During the pandemic, there were challenges of getting the raw materials. So, but, stocking the raw materials in the appropriate way and, hygienic way, I think, that is the more, organized way. And we had seen, oxygen getting shortages in the first pandemic and also on the second pandemic more severely. So I think getting ourselves more organized, managing the kitchen more professionally and, having a stock of maybe, say 15 days, or if you have the luxury of space, maybe have it for a month or so. So I think these are all measures that can help you to override the pandemic. Yeah, the issue is also housing the people who can cook food, and those are the challenges when it comes to manpower. I think that is the second challenge. The third challenge is cooking the food in a hygienic way and providing the food to the patients in a more hygienic way. There is a balance that you need to have, whether you want to go for. So at one hand, we have a green revolution that is happening, where we want to kind of conserve our resources. On the other hand, we have a challenge of hygiene, where everything is now into plastics and on disposable plastics and stuff, or disposable one-time use. So I think that balance we still need to kind of explore, where cost also is a big challenge in a country like India. So I think what the scenario was earlier, a few years back, and now what the scenario is today, there's a huge lot of difference. A lot of regulations have come in, especially from the central government as well as from the local government. The food FDA is really now stronger. They are doing more vigilant, and I think this is the way forward. India will move, and professionally managed kitchens, professionally managed hospitals, and providing better patient service. I think that's the way forward.
Great, amazing. Thanks for the answer, sir. Just the question, like the answers you were giving, I got curious about one thing that you were mentioning about, like not to have outsource the kitchen. You should have your own kitchen facility inside the building. Basically, I'm talking about. And you said that to get the manpower, you contact some professional organizations. Some of the organizations, they can come and deal with the food and handle the food. So I have this question to, in fact, both of our guests, Dr. Vivek as well as Dr. Raja. So let's first start with Dr. Raja. So my question is, when you approach any professional organization to manage the food, what essentially are the few things that you think these are the most important parameter, or these are something which are non-negotiable in terms of accepting or doing the contract with them?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I think we move forwarded now. All the corporate hospitals and for other hospitals now, don't want to manage the kitchen. That's very clear. So we want a professional people to manage the kitchen. So now housekeeping is managed by professional people. Similarly, the security services is now established that it's always better to outsource. And yeah, like the other way is the kitchen. So the complete food handling services and complete basket of providing patient food should be handled in a more professional way, and best given to people who can do it in a better way, rather than the hospital management trying to offer such services which they have no expertise in. Coming to your select people who are actually best at this. So I think the way forward is obviously whether it's a startup or whether it is a well organized company which has a thing. Most important is what kind of systems, processes they have, and wherever they are working.
You are talking about basically the SOP, standard operating procedures.
Correct. So what kind of system processes they are actually following? What are the stringent mechanism that they are having? So for example, if you see the manpower, whether they are doing the testing properly, whether the safety of the people who are working in the kitchen are provided. So like, for example, person who's washing the plates, or the person is provided with proper gear to wash them, like for example gloves, or a wearable washable kind of a coat, or even gum boots which they need to stand in the water and so that their feet don't get wet or something like that. So basic hygiene, and also including the vaccinations of typhoid and other which should be given regularly. The health checkups should be done for the persons who are cooking and providing, who are in contact with patients. So all these things are mandatory. The company, whoever is being outsourced, should look into all these aspects. Apart from, so taste and food is very, very subjective, and it differs from patient to patient. And so I think if we provide a fair level of hygiene,
Mhm.
and I think that should be it, rather than going into whether there's too much of salt or too much of less
Yeah.
salt, whether there's too much of chili or less chili. I think that is separate. But I think basic hygiene of clean food that is being presented to the patient at the appropriate temperature, and right from the kitchen to the patient what do you say, room. I think that should be the goal of any outsourced professional organization.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Dr. Raja, for this generous answer. Dr. Vivek, like while Dr. Raja was giving the answer, he was speaking about having the control over hygiene and many other such parameters.
Yeah, no, I understand. Your original question was to outsource or not to outsource.
Yeah, and that also he was answering the question. So one of the thing which I am now again curious about, like since you are the chairman of such a big chain and you have so many hospitals to manage, and of course it's very difficult, or let's say it will become very impractical on your part to physically go and check each and every parameters, or even you may have some team. So I just wish to understand at this point of time in Fortis, how do you ensure that all these parameters are being taken care by the vendor or the organization, whoever is in, has taken charge for the food?
No, not only Fortis. Your basic question should be that should a hospital run their own kitchen and look at nitty-gritties, or should the hospital outsource it and have a system of watching the back, especially on the hygiene, especially out in the post-pandemic era where we suspect that there may be a permanent pandemic.
Correct.
See, the logistics have to be aimed at the clinical practices, and there is a whole lot of thing that will absorb management in clinical practices. There has to be a collective leadership, which many people fail, because there are huge number of senior doctors who have a great bandwidth, far bigger than many managers. Now at the end of the day, areas like kitchen, which are very specialized non-medical activities,
Correct.
and also to avoid any unnecessary labor headaches, it's always better to outsource the kitchen facility. Now, companies like you could always connect the dot with multiple vendors or one vendor. That's a different story. But whatever vendor we have chosen, we have got in, we have put on certain our own expectations on food quality, taste, composition, etc. The most important factor post pandemic is the workforce in a kitchen and the other service areas. That is where we could have problems. So we can create our SOPs. The vendors can follow the SOPs, and whether the SOPs are followed or not, or whether there's a hanky panky, only that needs to be watched by the management. To watch that, the easiest way out, we have so many committees formed from the clinicians and the administrative interface to supervise certain areas, the infection control committee, the operation theater users committee, so on and so forth. So there could be a cafeteria or the food committee which should have the infection control team, one member from infection control team, the infectious disease specialist of the hospital, maybe one of the person from the COVID team, somebody senior, and of course the dietitian of the hospital. And then other people could be form of the team. This team has to be small, slim and trim, and should supervise and watch over the activity of the cafeteria and the supply team. Then SOPs can be managed. This is the way we also manage the our autoclave areas and our sterile supply CSTs, etc. In the same way, we manage and we observe CST. Though the technicians are ours, we could manage the cafeterias and the supply areas in the same way, the storage areas. It's not a challenge, but I would like to have the management team to have less encumbrance, as less as possible, and focus mostly on the clinical areas. Clinical areas I would divide as serious areas and non-serious areas. The non-serious areas could be civil administration.
Okay.
Areas like operation theater, the intensive care, there are armed forces areas where not much of unnecessary interference should happen, and the clinician should have more breathing space. So, but coming back to your question of food vendors, I would vote for an outsourcing and management.
Okay.
So I just wanted to know how Dormong is integrating the two things, keeping up with the expectations, managing the technology, managing the overall thing. What role is Dormong playing now to integrate the two things?
Okay. So this question for me you are saying, Murli?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. So thank you for the question, Murli. And like as I understand, your question is like how Dormonk is implementing the technology to bridge those gaps and fill the gaps and to resolve the major challenges what the hospital faces in terms of management of the food, right? Correct. So as you understand, Dormonk is a B2B food tech company where we have built an intelligent network for the food vendors. So we directly don't do the operation. Rather, we we believe in this principle saying never outsource your eyes. So we practically do each and everything which needs the operations to be handled. For example, to give digital audit system. So a CEO of the hospital who might be doesn't have the time, and practically it's not possible for him, or maybe even if he has the team, but still it's not practical on their part to always visit the kitchen physically. So we have built the digital audit system, which gives on one dashboard, one unified dashboard, all the informations, all the important essential parameters based on the compliances which were given by the government, the basic compliances as well as the high grade compliances, even the HACCP and SQF, safe quality food, which is very prominent in North American markets and North American hospitals. So we bring all this digital audit system. Apart from that, one of the very empiric challenge that I have observed while discussing with hospitals like maybe Dr. Vivek and Dr. Azali Khan can back me on this, because they have been in the operation. When I was talking to the hospital, sir, I have found that the hospitals are great at medicine, they are great at surgery, everything is fantastic, and as you were sharing, that the major problem comes, especially in food, when you have a food vendors, the process itself to onboard one food vendor on the portal is sometimes very tedious and lengthy. Sometimes it takes a month or more than 2 months, 3 months of time to ensure that each the vendors whom you are going to do the contract with are really capable. And this invests a lot of resources, a lot of energy, and also it also does not outsource the risk of human error. So what we do, we have created a platform where we have the vendors, curated vendors. So that's the column I'll use. And we have a very rigorous way of onboarding the vendors first. So when we have the vendor, we help them to connect with the hospitals as they proceed in their food requirement. Now, there's another risk for the hospitals in the current way and without Dormonk, let's say. Suppose if they contract with a vendor, and if a food vendor is performing nicely, for a week or so it was great, but after a week and or say a month, if their style of operation or their modus operandi is not matching with the standard operating procedures which has been set by the hospitals or the expectation of the hospital in normal terms, then it becomes again challenging work for the hospital to redo the entire process. So first thing, we have built the platform for the hospital. So even in our case, if the hospital is not satisfied with the vendor, they can switch to another vendor, and within a month of time, let's say. Second thing, we help the food vendors to ensure that all the standard operating procedures are really up to the mark and is being visible to the one unified dashboard to the COO, let's say, or the vice president of operation in the hospital. And the third very important tool that we are building is something called virtual nutritionist. Now, what happens to a patient as soon as you visit hospital? There is a primary diagnosis, and based on those primary diagnoses, generally, the dietitian builds a diet chart, and then she goes physically to the kitchen and hands over all these diet chart. Imagine a 10-storied hospital, big hospital, having let's say 500 beds and approximately 15 dietitians, nutritionists. This becomes a very tedious task for them to write all the data and handing it over to the kitchen sometimes. Now, what we do in our case is AI-based nutritionist. It observes the primary diagnosis data. It takes the data from the primary diagnosis which has been done for the patient, observes it. Based on that, since it's a machine learning application, it prepares a diet chart and sends it to the dietitian for approval. And once the dietitian approves it, it automatically sends it to the kitchen with the SOP. So this becomes easy for the kitchen to manage their, if they don't have to, there could be a very extraordinary person and can perform very unexpected high-level job. So these are the three things that we are basically, we have as our USP. First is that we have the platform for the vendors. The hospital doesn't have to worry about that. Second is we help the vendors to maintain the SOP, and it is visible with the digital order system to the hospitals. And third is AI-based nutritionists. So these are the three things we are doing as a company to ensure good food for all the hospitals in our country. So yeah, I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, definitely.
Great.
So are there any more questions?
Okay, sure. So, Dr. Vivek, now let's, I've been going through your profile and going to Dr. Raja, and I really like the way you are coming from the background. So, Dr. Vivek, I now let's talk a little bit about life and the philosophy, because we have many participants here. They are the startup entrepreneurs and they wish to do. So, my question to you is what are your few biggest mistakes in your life that you believe that if there is a chance you would like to correct those or something like that?
No, you can always recall some good things and count them on fingers. But mistakes cannot be counted on fingers. There are innumerable mistakes, and they happen every day. The only bottom line is that you cannot miss a mistake that's done by you, and the mistake should be analyzed, and the correct cause of the mistake should be known then and there. You should not forget, then it will not happen again. Otherwise, most of the mistakes repeat thrice. So few mistakes memorable. No, that is not true. Everybody's life in technology and otherwise is full of mistakes. The bottom line is, don't allow mistake to be unnoticed. That's all. Thank you.
Great. What is your opinion, Dr. Raja here, and what do you think are some mistakes, that the 5 mistakes or some mistakes that you have done in your life which you believe that you could have rectified, or as a beginner or as a young person should not do this kind of mistake?
Yeah, so I think we should first of all, as what Sir has just said, Dr. Vivek has said, that there's a difference between blunders and mistakes, and there's an always opportunity to correct the mistakes. and not repeat the mistakes. That is first one thing. Secondly is having the attitude of uh, finding a solution, or being a kind of a system dependent person in moving in that direction. So, for example, if anyone in the hospital or someone does a mistake, trying to find the corrective measures for that, and ensure that the same mistake doesn't happen again. Instead of punishing the person, try to find out why it is done, and we encourage people to kind of uh, say that they have done something wrong, or take the ownership of reporting it, so that there is there are streamlined measures that can happen, and corrective measures can take place. So that is one thing very important. And second is this attitude of not kind of pinpointing, or looking down upon a person that has done a mistake, because it's human nature to error. But as far as possible, we should try to avoid those mistakes and think on positivity. So being positive person, moving forward, being jovial, and we have very limited life. So I think we should look far more beyond mistakes, and just be content and happy and be thankful.
Great, amazing answer. I really like this, especially being positive and being jovial, and always being thankful and grateful to the people who have helped you. So, I have a question for you again, related to startup. And your background also comes from the medicine, and you have been in startups and encouraging startups in different ways. So, what do you see the future of a startup in our country, and how is it going to change the shape as a nation for us?
Yeah, so I think India is moving forward. Startups is the way forward. There is no doubt about it. There are some governments who've taken, very positive steps, like, the government of Telangana, which we have. We are very lucky. Also, the government of Karnataka, followed by, other central government, and also some states which are actually moving forward, especially for the young people. If you can see that earlier, the mindset is changing for the young people. Earlier, our parents and ourselves, which never really thought of venturing something which was not unconventional. So now people are looking, if they have an idea in mind and they want to execute it, uh, they are free to do it. There are support services that are in place. It is more easier to function in that way now, which it was earlier, maybe 5-10 years back. Lot of support for the startups. If you see Israel, that is the number one startup nation which has actually progressed. A lot of innovations that are happening, and I think startups leads to innovation. If there's an unmet need, that is the basic groundwork of the startup. And I think India is moving forward, and we should all encourage as much as possible. And I think the startups is the way forward. A lot of now corporates are coming back and supporting such startups, like for example Tata, Mahindra, and all other big corporates are encouraging such people who want to venture. So I think it's a great news, and every day I see a lot of new startups, especially in healthcare, which is actually very challenging. Especially even ourselves, like doctors, don't understand the whole gamut of medicine, but people who are not from the medicine background venture into this, because every mind thinks differently. We are all wired differently together. So I think that's what makes the beauty of this startup. And I think a special advice for all the young startups who are there, I think just hang on there. If you believe your idea is good, I think help is on your way, and you'll definitely make it big.
Great. Very nice answers, Dr. Raja. Dr. Vivek, one last question to you. What do you see where do you see the future of a startup in healthcare in our country?
Startup, I don't know. There's a lot of ado being made about it. You see, if you are doing something the way you did last year, something is wrong with you. Change is the only constant. And anything that became big was always a startup. So startups have been always there. Just because the world was more ruled by dogmatic people and it is now less ruled by dogmatic people, we seem to be making ado about startup. Everything is a startup, and there are systems in present right now, whether financing, whether regulations, encouragement for new ideas. It has been always there. It is there. So I think world changes only because of startups. We have now created this term and we are making ado about it, but they were always there. They will always be there, and world has to be changing, and it will be ever changing and only changing for better. If you look back 25 years, which year would we go backwards? Unless we are so foolish that we got into a civil war. Otherwise, yeah, I think this is the way life has gone, and this is the way life will go. And startups don't have to worry. You can resist invasion of great armies, but not of a thought whose time has come.
Correct.
So a great thought will always be a winner. Nobody can stop.
Great. Okay, sir. So now we are reaching to the end of our today's session for the guests. After that, we have the informal calls going on. While we end the call, just before ending the call, I'll take one bonus question. And meanwhile, if the audience have any questions, we'll take one or two questions. If they have, they can share. So, to Dr. Vivek, what would be your message to the young people who are here in the call?
3. Number 1, don't wait for the opportunity. Whatever comes in the front is an opportunity. You can make any dirty thing shine. And to make it shine, so if you wait, you will be like that guy going for arranged marriage, see 200 girls and marry the worst. Take what I will give you an example. I came to Bangalore from Bombay, which Bombay was a medical village. It was a very bad choice to come from Bombay, where I was a blue-eyed boy. I came here to start Jayadeva Institute of Cardiology. All my bosses laughed at me. But today, what we created, the Jayadeva Institute of Cardiology, has beaten my own alma mater, KEM Hospital of Bombay. So there is no the opportunity. Take what comes, and to make it shine, intelligence is no substitute for hard work. You have to work very hard. Number 2, you have to develop habit of excellence. What you do every day then becomes a habit, and then excellence is not one-time thing. If you combine hard work and excellence, then money, name, fame is a complication. That's the message. And don't wait for the opportunity.
Great. Do we have any question, Manik, from the audience, or can we end this session?
Yeah, I have posted one question for Dr. Vivek.
Yeah. No, I did not see. Can you somebody can say that?
Yeah, how do you focus on operations as heart is such a complex organ filled with lot of veins and arteries?
Okay, somebody flies a Concorde jet. It is so complex, but for that guy, it is just a job, and it doesn't excite at all. And so cardiac surgery, after you have learned it well, it's just like that. I'm just another pilot or a long distance bus driver.
Great, great.
Thanks.
Yeah, a few days back, I was just chatting with one of my friends, and he shared me that a few months back, I guess in March, his father-in-law had a surgery in Fortis, and then he said, guess who was the surgeon? I said, I got it. It was Dr. Vivek. So thanks a lot, Dr. Vivek and Dr. Raja, for taking out your time and joining us. We are really privileged and honored. We have so many insights that we'll be trying to implement in our life. So we are now running a short of the time. So
there's one question from Mr. Gyan Prakash. He's saying for Dr. Vivek, don't you feel that as we become more advanced, somewhere down we are becoming selfish?
When we were not selfish, I think that again is we are making such a big ado about it. We were always selfish. That's how our genes are made.
And I guess being selfish helps us to be more productive and to contribute in a positive way.
The humans were always same. We were never different. The only tragedy is that only the other person is selfish and I am not. Don't worry about all that. Just work hard, take what God gives you. Universe always has good plans for you. It's only you who can spoil those plans. Don't worry about all that.
Great. Okay, so thanks to both our guests.